Warning. The views and opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect that of the HHN TV or its constituent entities. Viewer discretion is advised.
Well, I've been saying now for the last 2 years that Jayden Daniels is the most NFL-ready quarterback that there was in college football. He was the best quarterback coming out of this draft. That's right, better than Caleb Williams. And to me, the proof in the pudding was when he was still at LSU. And they played against Alabama. They were in that football game until Jayden Daniels went down. Without him, they were not competitive at all offensively. And I maintained that if Bo Nix and Jayden Daniels were to swap places, Bo Nix at LSU is 600, or pardon me, 6-6, or a 500 football team. Jayden Daniels at Oregon, I maintained they would be the national champions. And I mean that. As good as Michael Penix Jr. is, because I thought he was the second best prospect coming out of the NFL draft, I really think that Oregon would have won a championship with Jayden Daniels. No offensive line, seeing the football field the way that he does. And you look at this game from last night between Washington and Cincinnati, what you are going to see is numerous occasions they put the ball in his hands and he succeeded. And we're not talking about mundane play calls. We are talking about option plays, RPOs, drop back and throw it deep. 4th and 4, they put it in his hands. They didn't play it safe. They put it in his hands, and it was 9-yard completion, first down. 3rd and 7, they could have easily ran the football and just said, let's let our defense try and finish this game out. Instead, they put the ball in the hands of Jayden Daniels, who, by the way, was under pressure on that play, and he knew exactly where his man was going to be on the route. Now, why did he know that? Because he is well-studied. He knows what his guys are capable of. Sets an NFL record for the highest completion percentage by a rookie in a game ever. I know that somebody out there is going to go, whatever, man, you're just being geeked up. Bro, Ham, I have been saying this. If Jayden Daniels had an offensive line when he was at LSU, if he had a truly good team around him, they could have won a championship. But, you know, he got hurt. On top of that, you're competing against Alabama and Georgia. You are going to have more than just one guy on your team. That's the reality of the situation. Well, what about so-and-so wide receiver? What about this guy? What about that guy? Go back and rewatch. Jane's back there running for his life. Nobody's getting open. He's having to extend plays. Without the ability to extend plays, half of what happened while he was at LSU doesn't even happen. He deserved, to me, the Heisman Trophy the year before, and they finally gave it to him this past season. You know, I think people forget that Heisman Trophy literally means the most important player to their team. That's essentially what the Heisman Trophy is. Jayden Daniels was the most important player on his team. Now, I hate the fact, and I'll say this again for the millionth time, that they've basically turned it into a quarterback trophy. Because to me, you go look at Oregon, Bucky Irving, and that offensive line. They were the real leaders on that football team in terms of whose team was it really. Audric estimated me that was his team at Notre Dame. Wasn't given the football enough. But with Jayden Daniels, it was a different situation. And I've had people contest me before. Well, how come he couldn't do this at LSU? If he was so great, how come, or pardon me, Arizona State, if he was so great, how come he wasn't doing it there? Again, go back and watch. And he really doesn't have the greatest offensive line in Washington either. But see, though, that's what separates quarterbacks like him from everybody else. You go look at Patrick Mahomes and the horrible offensive line play that he had for a couple of years in Kansas City, still was getting that team to AFC Championship games and Super Bowls. Go look at Joe Burrow, the horrible offensive line play that he was getting and has continued to get in Cincinnati. You know, Burrow really didn't play bad last night, speaking of which. He's just going to get overshadowed by what Jayden Daniels accomplished. That's literally what that's going to amount to. I've been saying for I don't know how long that if I had to start a franchise right now with the quarterbacks that were coming out of this draft, I would have chose Jayden Daniels. Simultaneously, you can't necessarily rely on your quarterback to come in and save a franchise, right? Because if he doesn't have a line, now he's risking injury. We saw it with Joe Burrow, who, don't get me wrong, has had injuries where where line play didn't matter, right? We're talking away from game injuries, obviously. Some guys are just prone to injury. That's just, the way that it is. But the point of what I'm saying is Jayden Daniels was the best to me that was coming out of college. I am not somebody who's getting geeked up on one football game right now. I am tired about the conversations of Caleb Williams. I get that he was a number 1 draft pick. I get that the Chicago Bears made a lot of moves. I get what they did in the NFL draft. I get all of that. But the reality is, if Jayden Daniels were to trade places right now with Caleb Williams, Chicago would be an undefeated football team. Hell, if Justin Fields was still there, they might be an undefeated football team. I know for sure if Patrick Mahomes was, they would be. And speaking of Caleb Williams, look, I've been saying since he was at OU that I don't think he's going to cut the mustard in the NFL. Look, there are guys who are just really good at the collegiate level, but they're not good at the professional level. Once they get there, they have a tendency to falter. And I don't want to hear about how many passing yards he just had against the Colts. I've said before that he's probably going to have a couple of really good games. But right now, look at how frustrated DJ Moore clearly is. Look how frustrated the other receivers clearly are. Their body language is not hidden whatsoever. Chicago should have won that game. He's not patient enough back there. He misses too many throws. I mean, don't get me wrong. He could do some things. We've all seen him on the run make some incredible throws. We've all seen it happen. But when it comes down to just being a quarterback and just seeing the field, being able to see the line of scrimmage, being able to read defenses, being able to just drop back and play quarterback, he can't do it. And I know that Chicago Bear fan is going to talk about the offensive line play. Well, where was that excuse for Justin Fields a season ago? Because, yes, you drafted an offensive lineman. I get it. Kid out of Yale. Okay, but he had season-ending surgery. I understand. You got to give him a little bit of time, maybe see where that develops into for next year. You miss out on him. I get that. I mean, kid only gave up 5 sacks or 1 sack in 5 years the whole time he was at Yale. So I get it, okay? But you also drafted wide receivers. The year before, you got DJ Moore. This year, you went out and got DeAndre Swift at running back. They are not without talent. And I'm not saying that they're clearly inept with coaching a little bit, right? But even then, we are seeing the play calls are there. They signed a lot of defensive players. The defense has been holding up their end of the bargain. Special teams defensively has been pretty good for that team. Jonathan Owens has made a really big play. Obviously, the recovery for the return for the touchdown. The defense put up numbers, scores. Like, everybody's doing their part. The receivers are getting open. Pretty much everybody's doing their part. Why is it that they are not winning football games? And look, this is why I hate stats. Caleb Williams is the definition of why I hate stats. Because of that one game, people are going to look and go, well, come on, man. Didn't you see that game? The potential is there. It's got to be everybody else's fault. At what point, and I'm not saying that there's never a responsibility on an organization, because I've talked about this, but more than one thing can be true at a time. And at some point, we have to stop blaming everybody else because a quarterback cannot get it done. I'm not saying that there are situations out there that where if I were an NFL player or a prospect in today's NFL, that there are teams I wouldn't want to go to. Now, I talked about it before. If I was Caleb Williams, I would have demanded that Chicago does not draft me. And every other team that would have been waiting right around the top 15, I'd have told them no. Well, the other teams don't need a quarterback. Hey, look, man, the Atlanta Falcons did not need a quarterback, but they still drafted Michael Penix Jr. Sitting and waiting. The NFL is changing. The NFL is getting smarter. These teams are realizing that the formula for success is not drafting what we think is the best prospect and then starting him immediately and throwing him to the fire. There are very few Jayden Daniels out there. There are very few Patrick Mahomes out there. Even Tom Brady technically didn't start right out the gate as a rookie. He was placed out of necessity. I'm not saying he didn't earn a second spot, and I'm not saying that he didn't have the career of the GOAT. What I'm saying is even he didn't start right away. And even he has been like, why are we doing this? Why are we throwing everybody under the fire? I said before that if Chicago really truly believes that Caleb Williams is the future of that franchise, then they could have literally started anybody else and just dealt with a couple of bad seasons while you continue to add. And what is the sales pitch? It's very simple. Hey, look. We're letting Caleb sit. We're letting him learn. We want you to come in. We want you to be a part of his building. We want you to be a part of him showing him the ropes. We want you to be a part of getting him used to the playbook, what it takes to be a professional in the locker room, all that stuff, man. Look, I know why C.J. Stroud tried to give him some help, we'll call it, okay? It had nothing to do with him trying to big bro him or any of that stuff. More than anything, I think it was him saying, bro, I dealt with this already. I know what this is like. You're going to be okay. Just keep going. There's nothing wrong with encouraging somebody. I think that's what he was really trying to do. Now, whether or not Caleb Williams wants to receive it, who the hell knows? Who the hell, I guess at the end of the day, really cares? What I'm saying and what I'm boiling it down to is this. I don't know that Caleb Williams has the leadership intangibles that it requires to be a true quarterback in the NFL. You know, at the collegiate level, guys will put up with stuff because some of them just aren't going to be able to go anywhere else. They're making money now while they're there in college, so they're willing to put up with things. But in the NFL, everybody's making money. In the NFL, everybody's getting an opportunity for the most part. In the NFL, everybody's a grown man, and not everybody's going to take somebody that comes in cocky and arrogant, consistently running around, telling everybody how they don't get nervous, they don't get scared. You can't have it. You look at the interview with Jayden Daniels after that football game, it's completely different than anything that we have seen from Caleb Williams for the most part since he's been in the NFL. When all is said and done, everybody will remember the name of Jayden Daniels. Caleb Williams will just be another quarterback who couldn't do it. Is it the fault of the Chicago Bears? Is it the fault of Caleb Williams? I mean, I'm not saying that everybody's perfect and that there's no blame on the Chicago Bears whatsoever. But, Caleb Williams has the capacity and the capability to step up and say, I'm not starting. I'm waiting. I'm learning. I'm watching. Give me that opportunity. It's not that hard. I've said over and over again in my career, it takes 4 years. 4 years to learn how to be a quarterback in this league. That's all I'm saying. All right, so real quick here while we're staying with quarterbacks, Sam Darnold looks like he's going to be okay. They did a scan on him. Looks like he's going to be good to go for this weekend. We're seeing a couple of I guess you could call it resurgence from a couple of different quarterbacks who look like their career was all but over. But, I'm not super geeked up on Sam Darnold just yet. Look, it's amazing what he's been doing. And I'm not going to try and downplay it a whole hell of a lot because I never root for the downfall of somebody. I know that it seems like maybe I do sometimes, but, there's just players out there that I think will just never be successful. And to me, Caleb Williams is one of them. It is what it is. I don't think anybody saw Sam Darnold coming. Now, to be fair, though, it's still the beginning of the season, right? Even with Jayden Daniels, it's still early in his career. It's still early in the season. We'll see what happens. Because a lot of people are going to say that win over Cincinnati is really not that great anyway. But this is Cincinnati football. I've talked about this over and over again. They start off slow, and then they start picking it up and going strong. It's the way that it is. And something I could say I definitely liked from them was they didn't give up in that football game whatsoever. So, if I'm them, I'm not ashamed of that loss. But, back to Sam Darnold here. Look, for me, the main thing with Minnesota right now is the fact that they're not very deep at quarterback. It's not a situation like what you have right now with the Atlanta Falcons, where I think they have an embarrassment of riches in the QB room potentially. I'm not saying that Kirk Cousins is the end-all, be-all. You could do a lot better, obviously, but you could also clearly do a lot worse. And with Michael Penix Jr. and his potential, I think at the end of the day, you end up being okay. But I just don't know that if he gets hurt, how good they're really going to be back there. That's all I'm saying. I mean, Nick Mullins, it's a tricky situation because Minnesota is one of those football teams that seemingly had everything just a few years ago. It looked like Kirk Cousins was finally on his game. It looked like Dalvin Cook was going to be the next great running back in the NFL. It looked like Stephon Diggs was going to be the future at wide receiver at one point with that football team. It looked like you had it all. Then after Stephon Diggs, you get Justin Jefferson. I mean, you put together a team that you thought to yourself, this has got to be good. But they failed, and they failed miserably. And they fell flat on their face. Now, they're off to a pretty decent start, but it is September. And September is for the pretender. I've said that I don't know how many times over the course of my career. I think right now, if I'm the Minnesota Vikings, I am putting together the best pass pro packages that I could potentially think of. I'm leaving every running back on planet Earth to block. I am not taking too many risks. Because if he's already dealing with injuries, it's not going to get any better from here. And so if I'm them, I'm not taking any real risk. And to be honest with you, I might start playing some really conservative football. Not that they haven't already been doing it, but I'm playing real conservative football, man. And to be honest, that's word. All right, Bills, Jags from last night. Boy, that was a nightmare. Look, I don't want to say a season is over for any football team right now because, again, it is September. But the start for Jacksonville, it's been horrendous, Broham. They don't look good. Trevor Lawrence is, I never really saw the draw to him when he was at Clemson to begin with, if I'm being honest with you. To me, he was hit and miss as a quarterback. I think he's that way in the NFL. I think he's very hit and miss. Yeah, they took the extra step to name it basically Trevor Lawrence Stadium for a football game this year. That ended up horribly. Buffalo, those fans, we all know that they're rabid. It's one of the closest, to me, atmospheres that you have in the NFL that compares to a collegiate football game. And for a guy who has been very critical of Josh Allen, look, the whole team looked great last night. Not that I'm saying that Jacksonville is formidable competition by any stretch of the imagination, but the whole team executed, and they pretty much did whatever they wanted to do, especially in the first half. I guess the one thing I could credit Jacksonville on is in the second half, initially, they came out and they didn't really look that bad. But, the game doesn't start in the second half, amigo. It's full 4 quarters. Jacksonville's pretty much horrible in every aspect of the game right now. Passing game isn't there. The run game is, The offensive line is not terrible. It's not great. It's not terrible by any stretch of the imagination. There are offensive lines out there that are way worse. I'll tell you that right now. Defensively, they're soft. Just doesn't seem like there's any structure to their play calling. It doesn't seem like there's any rhyme or reason to anything that they're doing. I mean, it literally looks like they're just going out there and winging it, man. It's seriously. I mean, it's kind of like watching Pee Wee football in terms of the play calling, where the coach goes, I write 22 dive. Hell with it. Let's try and confuse them. I write 23 dive. How about that? Huh? I mean, seriously, that's part of what it looks like out there. So I just don't think Jacksonville is a team that can recover. We've seen Cincinnati recover before, so we know for them it's a possibility. We've kind of seen Jacksonville recover before, right? But I just don't see it this year. It looks to me like nobody on that football team gives one red damn about being there. They really shouldn't be. Like, it's almost like they're just collecting a paycheck, man. Just doesn't seem to be any unity. It looks like everybody's just kind of lethargic. They don't care. I don't know if it's a coaching thing or what, but Jacksonville looks horrible. So I can appreciate the start that Buffalo's off to, right? You had the comeback against Arizona, which, how good are they going to end up being this year? I guess we'll find out. There's really, to me, not a lot there that signifies truly good football team this season, but we'll see, obviously. Last weekend, okay, maybe give that to them, but tonight or last night, they looked good, don't get me wrong, but I think right now it's really easy to look good against Jacksonville. They're not doing anything complicated. There's nothing exotic about their blitz packages. There's nothing incredible about what they're trying to accomplish on offense. They just don't look like a team that is focused. Their head's not in the game. How do you lose that bad in the NFL? I mean, seriously. There's no excuse. You can't sit around and make excuses for this football team. You can't wake up and go, well, this happened and that happened and it's Josh Allen and it's this and it's Von Miller and it's that and it's no. Forget all that. There is no excuse at the professional level for losing games that horrifically. None. And you're not going to change my mind on that either. Man, I'm just saying. All right, so Denver. Well, I guess they were bound to win one, right? I mean, again, I just don't see it with Bo Nix. Again, I said this about him, the same thing I said about Caleb Williams. Of course, he's in the NFL. Of course, he's an NFL quarterback who's starting right now as a rookie. So, of course, he's going to have a couple of good games here and there. But for the most part, when you look overall, Tampa Bay they didn't look focused. They looked like they were just kind of going through the motions. That game was in their backyard, man. And Denver defensively was a big part of why they won that football game. Not that Tampa Bay looked really great on offense that day. I think the start that they got off to maybe got on their heads, and we all know how Baker can get. So there's that. What I'm saying is look, I'm not going to get geeked up on, as a lifelong Broncos fan, it's not happening. I'm not going to get geeked up on one win. I'm not going to get geeked up on Bo Nix. I'm not going to get geeked up and say we're turning the season around, or they're turning the season around, pardon me. I'm not going to get geeked up and say the defense is back. None of that is going to happen. Cortland Sutton still has fumbleitis. What I can't stand about anything that ever happens in sports is one game everybody goes, oh, well, maybe I was wrong after all. Maybe they're actually good. Maybe it's this. Maybe, they just needed to have that, No. No, Bo Nix is still Bo Nix, man, and he was in the right place at the right time when he was at Oregon. Well, how does he look? How's Oregon look without him right now? Okay, go look at how many players left. Go look at how many players left. What I'm saying to you is, with college football, there's no more he basically left the same team behind. That doesn't exist anymore. You don't have a guy a lot of times who's been sitting there waiting around for 3-4 years like you did before, 2-3 years like you did before, waiting their turn, being patient. Not with the transfer portal. That ain't happening, man. Not with people going to the league. That ain't happening. It's not the same as it was before. We can't sit around and say, well, these are pretty much the same teams, because they're not. Bo Nix found himself at the right place at the right time. Now, I will say this, and again, this is something I'm reiterating, and that is, if there was a situation that Bo Nix could go to that fit where he excelled, it was Denver. It also would have been probably New Orleans. It also would have been Frisco and Detroit. Those 3 or 4 teams right there, they would have directly fit in stylistically with what he does. It's literally the perfect fit. Simultaneously, I will say this, he doesn't have an O-line. Neither did Russ. Nothing has changed about Peyton's approach to offense or football, really, for the most part, since probably about 2008. And I think that because there's no real risks that are being taken, they took some the other day. Don't get me wrong. They took some risks, but it's got to be on a more consistent basis. At some point, you got to stretch the defense out. You got to make them scared that you're going to throw it deep. And I don't care what Mel Kiper says. Too high safety is not ruining the game of football. That dude can stuff it. Seriously, man, I'm so tired of the. I mean, it's funny, man. My homeboy asked me about a week ago, you think the Chiefs are ruining football because they really don't use running backs? And I'm like, nah, man, it's sports journalists who aren't entertained enough and don't know enough about the game of football and all they can ever evaluate is the quarterback position, and that's really about it. And even then, name a time when Kiper has correctly evaluated the quarterback position. What I'm saying is that is what ruins football. Literally has no clue and no desire to study the game. It's just a bunch of popping off, loving to hear themselves talk is really what it amounts to. The reality is, two high safety is not ruining football. There's nothing wrong with good defense. And we're not creeping safeties up 15 yards just to make you happy. They ought to outlaw it and make it illegal. Man, you really just hate defense, don't you? And look, as somebody who has to watch every game, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, I get it. But guess what? There's going to be bad games that you're going to have to sit through. There's going to be blowouts. There's going to be boring games. There's going to be times when we're wrong. And guess what, Broham? That's okay. We can't always be right. Nobody can. It doesn't exist. Except for this one time. But it doesn't, other than that, it doesn't exist. What I am saying is, he has no clue what the hell he's talking about. And if you want to help with the run game and you want to help create opportunities for your guy, take the Washington approach and stretch the defense out. Play calls that force safeties into situations. Bro thinks he knows ball because he said too high safety. Are you kidding me? Sorry, side note there. So Frisco, I'm sure we've all seen this. Mac looks like he's headed to Germany. Oof. You know, look, I'm not going to say it's the Madden curse because I don't think it is. In fact, does anybody remember that commercial that Tom Brady did because he was going to be on the cover of Madden? He was still in New England at this point, and he goes, "Hexes and curses do not exist." And he was walking under a ladder. He also knocked out a mirror. I mean, all kinds of crazy stuff, man. I mean, you want to talk about giving Patriots fans a heart attack, bro. Damn. But I don't know. I err on I guess you make your own luck. You're blessed. The Jayden Daniels approach. What I'm saying is, I'm not going to blame a hex, as funny as it is to talk about, on what's going on with C-Mac right now. Now, supposedly, he is going over there to look at some potential procedures. Now, the procedures are very, very controversial and something that is starting to circulate around the world, and I'm not saying this is what he's going over there for, but it is starting to circulate, and that is stem cell. It's somewhat made its way over into the States. It's in other countries right now. I don't know if that's what he's going to go do, but what I'm saying is it's out there. There are a lot of people that think Aaron Rodgers did it. What I'm saying is, I don't know what procedure he's thinking about, and I'm not really sure if it matters because right now, I'm not saying that the season isn't recoverable because it definitely is, but it definitely doesn't look good right now. Obviously, you had the huge opening win against the Jets, right? But compared to where the Jets, it seems like the direction they're potentially going versus the direction that you're going, you know, New York is probably not going to be favored in a lot of football games this year. The 49ers are. And you still had a hell of a run game and a performance from the offensive line on opening Monday night. I think the issue is that, look, I don't want to say I'm right, but to hell with it. Without Christian McCaffrey, you're just not as good. Plus, you ain't got Debo right now. Brandon Ayuk. I mean, come on. Brock Purdy's just not good enough to carry the team by himself. He's just not. It's the reality of the situation. If it all breaks down, Brock Purdy's not that guy. Now, kind of a crazy finish, and I know we all saw the interview with Sean McVay directly afterwards where he's cussing and just going, whoa, yeah, and all this other stuff. And it's, yeah, whatever, bro, do you. I can only imagine what you were feeling watching that thing go down, but what I'm saying is very simple here. They're not good enough without C-Mac. And I don't know why 49er fan has had this vendetta with me for the last couple of seasons. It's just the way that it is. Again, for the umpteenth time, that team was 2-3 when he got there. He was there for a day. They only used him on a few different plays. They lost to the Kansas City Chiefs. They're 2-4 at that point. They don't lose again until the NFC Championship game. By the way, when the win streak started, Jimmy G was the quarterback. Then he got hurt right around December, and then Brock Purdy came in. They made the decision to stick with Brock Purdy, and they let go with Jimmy G. Now, me personally, I don't know. I mean, Jimmy G, he got suspended for the first couple of games of the year for alleged PED use, right? And we've all seen what's happened since he's left. So, to me, it's kind of one of those things where it's like, okay, who's the guy at the end of the day that we're going to say, hand it off or throw it 5 yards? Brock Purdy's made some throws. Do not get me twisted. Brock Purdy's done some things. Do not get me twisted. I think he's competitive. He's a nice kid. All those things. I just don't think he's good enough to be the quarterback that you look to on your football team and you go, if we didn't have Brock Purdy, we wouldn't have been as competitive. If we didn't have Brock Purdy, we wouldn't have been as good. You know, the window for success in the NFL is such a small window. And before Christian McCaffrey, you were kind of hit and miss, right? You go to the Super Bowl. You should have won that football game. You could blame a million and one things on why you didn't. The bottom line is you couldn't get it done against the Chiefs the first time. You get the easiest to say right now at any position other than maybe quarterback with Patrick Mahomes, Christian McCaffrey, the best running back in the entire NFL. You had your shot last year. You were up again, and you blew it. In the games where C-Mac was either unavailable or didn't play well, Brock Purdy in the losses that really mattered last year had 10 total turnovers. You stop C-Mac or he's not there, and you have a football team that has got a quarterback that is not able to get it done when the game is on the line. There should be a clear difference between what we see with Brock Purdy and what we saw with Jayden Daniels. They trusted a rookie last night. Put the game 100% in his hands. They're not doing that with Brock Purdy. They want to put the ball in the hands of Debo. They want to put it in C-Mac's hands. They want to put it in other running backs' hands. They want to put it in Kettle's hands. They want to literally do everything else that they can. And look, I get it. It's a team game. I understand that aspect. But when all is said and done, I've never seen it with Brock. I'm never going to see it with Brock. He's not it. And if C-Mac cannot get healthy before this season comes out of probably first week of October, might as well throw your hands up. That's the way that it's looking. All right. So real quick here, man, I did anybody see North Carolina and James Madison JMU? Well, that was a different one to watch. 70-50. I mean, if you didn't know better, you would have thought that was an early season basketball game. The interview with Mac Brown was, I shouldn't have done it. I shouldn't have put it on my kids. After the game was over, I went to them and said, hey, do you guys want me to go? Which, to me, and he admitted that it was selfish. So at least he did that. But I think for me, what that is it's really kind of one of two things, right? It's either Matt Brown questioning himself and whether or not he can do this anymore, or he's trying to save his ass and he can go to the AD or whomever and go, well, go ask the kids. They've already told me that they want me here. Of course, then again, not like they would say no to his face. That is a game that if you watched it, you realize a couple of different things. Number one, it was insane offense, thanks mainly to mediocre defense from both football teams. There was a lot of turnovers. There were a lot of missed opportunities. There were a lot of really bad plays. The numbers in that crazy-ass game, for the most part, the ones that are going to get talked about are not going to be reflective at how actually unentertaining that game was. You know, I've never really been a fan like that West Virginia game. Remember years ago in the bowl game, who they played? Was it Clemson? Was it Clemson they played in that game? Where it was like 77-69 or whatever the hell the damn score was. I mean, that's just not entertaining to me. I'm sitting there watching this track meet go up and down the field, and I'm just like, can somebody do something defensively? I mean, that game on Saturday with JMU and North Carolina, there was so much bad tackling. You know, I don't know how it's allowed in today's day and age, and I'm not saying that every game everybody's going to be tip-top, and I get that. But the fact that that many points were scored in that game, that's egregious. I mean, guys were able to spin out of everything. Nobody was driving. Nobody was wrapping up. Nobody was doing anything. I mean, that was just... And sorry, P, but your boys are done this season. Well, you don't come back from that. And I can appreciate Mac Brown and his sentiment and all that, and I agree. It was good of him to apologize because it's certainly not something that he needed to do. When all is said and done, North Carolina, it could be symptomatic of the ACC as a whole this year. Yeah, I understand that Clemson had what to a lot of people is going to be a bounce-back game, but I don't think so. I mean, everybody, I'm sure, saw that play with, Kate Klubnik, beginning of the game, the way that they just ran all over him. Okay, that's fine, but I mean, Wake Forest, they already caught a beat down, and potentially that beat down made them back out of the next game with Ole Miss. I don't know that Clemson would be able to take on anybody right now in the CFP. I mean, I understand it was only the first game of the year, but you damn sure didn't look good, especially on offense throughout the whole game. And defensively, you played okay in the first half, but you got figured out real quick in the second half, right? So for my money, I don't see it. Syracuse, they already got beat. Georgia Tech, I don't think so. North Carolina, they're done. I mean, I don't know. Right now, you look at some of the other teams. Illinois, I think they're pretty good still. Indiana's a severely underrated football team. Obviously, I'm talking Big Ten here. But if you go to the playoffs, right, if you're an ACC team and you go to the playoffs, you got to see Georgia, right? Michigan, probably have to see them. Might have to see a team like Tennessee, maybe Texas. I don't know, man. If you're an ACC fan, I mean, Louisville, I think they have the offensive capability to keep up with just about anybody in the country, but I don't think they have the defensive capability to stop anybody. And so if it comes down to a last possession, your defense is going to fail you. And I think your defense is going to fail you more often than your offense is going to be able to assist you. So I don't think Louisville gets it done. It's tough. It's tough right now. All right, everybody, I'm Drew Duncan. Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram is all at Drew Duncan Radio. The show is Underground Sports. Wherever you're listening to podcasts, take a device to play Underground Sports by Drew Duncan. Of course, you can Google Underground Sports by Drew Duncan. I'm going to pop right up, not a needle in a haystack. Obviously, we're going to be having our Football Insider coming up this week. Austin Ford will be back with us on Friday. I did not have a show the last couple of days of the week, like I said, on yesterday's program. In the hospital, got a few things going on. Your boy is going to keep on pushing though. In the meantime, your local programming is next. Don't you dare touch that dial.